Thank you all for joining and welcome to another Scrum webinar. I'm super excited to have you all here. And in the beginning, I'm just going to go a bit over the agenda so that you know what we are talking about in this webinar. And also in the second part of the webinar, we're going to have a live Q&A and explain how that goes. So the agenda is as follows. I'm going to talk in the beginning about the newest version of the Scrum Guide that hasn't been published yet. And I'm going to go a bit into what we already know about the Scrum Guide 2020 and what we expect in terms of the exam. And in the second part of the webinar, you can ask any questions. We'll have like the live Q&A. So this is how it goes. So I see that people are still joining, so that's totally great. We're just getting started with the first part of the webinar, and that is the Scrum Guide 2020. So the idea is as follows. Soon there will be a new version of the Scrum Guide. Now this Scrum Guide is this document on which the Professional Scrum Master 1, 2, 3, Product Owner certifications and so on are based. So this is like what we are all inside the course studying a lot, trying to understand. And this document has changed over the years. There were different versions that were released, and the current version that we know of the Scrum Guide, and that's publicly available, is from 2017. So there are already a few years since the Scrum Guide hasn't been updated. And of course, there's always a learn process, just as in Scrum. You get some feedback from the community, and the creators of Scrum have started updating the Scrum Guide, and now it is ready. Now, unfortunately, we cannot take a sneak peek at it to understand what has changed, but I'm gonna go a bit over like what are the main ideas, what you should expect, what do we know so far. So we know that work has started on updating the Scrum Guide around 2019. There was like a lot of feedback that has been gathered over the years, and somewhere mid 2019, this feedback opportunity has closed, and I assume that the creators of Scrum started working with other people and updating the Scrum Guide. And apparently right now the Scrum Guide is ready, but it's not publicly available. It will be given to translators. It will be given, of course, to scrum.org, Scrum Alliance, other institutions that are directly involved with Scrum to give them an opportunity to update their materials and so on. And most likely, the Scrum Guide will be publicly available somewhere November, December of this year. So anyway, by the end of the year, we'll have a new Scrum Guide version that's publicly available, and everyone will be able to look into that and see what has changed. I'm just as curious as you are. But this is all that we know. We also know that it would be a few pages shorter. So this time it will be only 13 pages long. The current version of the Scrum Guide was kind of 16 pages if you subtract like the first page and the last pages or something like that. So it will definitely be much shorter. And it seems that it will be refocused, not to concentrate so much on software development. As you know, Scrum can be applied in many fields. Originally has and still is super popular when it comes to software development or software projects in general. Not so popular in other areas, and probably one of the focuses that will be laid in terms of the Scrum Guide will be to make it more generic and not to have so many, let's say, software development references inside it. Additionally, it seems that the 3 suggested questions that are in the daily Scrum, that they will be removed. That will be not even a suggestion anymore how to run the daily Scrum, like what I did yesterday, what I did yesterday, what I'm planning to do today, and if I have any impediments in terms of reaching the sprint goal. So that will disappear. And also there were some discussions in terms of the term master, also in light of recent events in the US. And it seems that the creators of Scrum have decided to keep this name Scrum Master. And the Scrum Master will still be the master of the Scrum process as we know it. So it seems that the term master will not be abandoned or changed or anything like that. So this is the part with what we know so far. The second question is like, great, there's a new version coming. What does it mean for me? I just started preparing for the exam. What do I need to do right now? Is there anything that I need to do right now? And this is what I'm going to try to clarify. And this general idea is you don't have to worry. I just want to give you like my opinion on what we know so far, also from past experience. But there's nothing that you need to do right now apart from prepare and pass the exam. So obviously, once the Scrum Guide will be published, it is expected that all Scrum.org certifications and possibly also other certifications from other institutes that use the Scrum Guide as the basis for certifications will be updated to reflect the latest changes from the Scrum Guide. And for example, one of these changes may be that there will be a less of a focus on software development or software development technologies and terms and so on, and more like a generic approach to Scrum. Now, that being said, if you started like preparing right now for the exam, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden the new version of the Scrum Guide will be published, say, on the 1st of December, and then on the 2nd of December, when you wanted to take the exam, all the questions will be like new questions from the new Scrum Guide. That is very, very unlikely that a change like this will happen immediately. Of course, the change will happen. We know that it will happen. And we generally know that anyone doing training in this regards will need some time in order to update materials, to do the preparation work. Also, the kind of questions the prep questions that you see in different kind of courses, including my courses, they will need to be updated or changed or totally removed to reflect, well, what's the information that is currently available in the Scrum Guide. So definitely that will take time as well. So what I expect from Scrum.org in this case is that they will announce like a transition period, and they will say, okay, let's say on the 1st of December, the new Scrum Guide was published, and we'll say, we'll update our exam questions only starting from the 1st of January or 15th of January or 1st of February or so on. So I expect that we will learn more information from Scrum.org as we go, probably as soon as the Scrum Guide will be published, then we'll know more. But so far, the main idea is that you don't need to worry. This doesn't affect the way you're preparing for this exam. Additionally, any Scrum.org certifications do not expire. So there's no reason for you to worry if you're passing the exam based on the 2017 version of the Scrum Guide. Your certification will be just as valid and just as valuable as it will be, say, if you wait to take the new exam. Now, what I definitely recommend, and I know that people really do not need a lot of time to prepare, is that you don't delay your preparation too much. Most students need only about 2 to 4 weeks of preparation time in order to pass the PSM-1 or the pspo-i exam. So if you already started your preparation, say today, you still have plenty of time till, say, December or January to learn everything that you need to know, to do all the practice tests as they are today, and to pass the exam, get the certification from Scrum.org, and continue with your career or whatever else you're doing. So from that point of view, there's nothing that you need to do. There's nothing that you need to worry about. And just in case you're watching this a bit later, if there are any updates that are relevant for you, I will let you know. I will send educational announcements, or I will post an update in this video description so that you can look to see if there's anything that has changed. So this is the part when it comes to the new Scrum Guide. Unfortunately, this is all that we know. There's not really a lot of information out there. The creators of Scrum haven't really released like announcements saying that what they are planning to change, or they haven't released any drafts or anything that we can look into, try to understand what are the ideas, what has changed, or what's expecting us. So we'll have to wait to see when the Scrum Guide will get published. And we'll see upon that if there's anything that we need to do. Honestly, I expect that there will be some changes, but of course, the overall way how the Scrum framework works will definitely stay the same. So it's just yet another iteration of this amazing framework. So we can now go into the Q&A section. I see that there's quite a few people who have joined right now. So it seems that we have Stan here, and we're going to start with you, Stan.
It's good afternoon. I don't know if it's morning out there, but it's afternoon here, Georgia. And
good morning, Georgia.
My question is, so if one already is studying for the PSM-1, does that mean I should just, get it done, or I'll need to just wait for the new one to come out? Yeah. How does that work?
So if I were you, there's absolutely no reason to wait. If you already started your preparations, there's no advantage in waiting. I would say there's even like more risk, because if you take the exam right now, there's already a lot of information also in terms of my course. How is the exam gonna work? Which are like the questions that are, how to approach hard questions and so on. So we're not sure exactly what will change when the new version will come out. So there will be like a gap in terms of like updating content and so on. So if I were you, I would take the exam as soon as possible. You have all the material, the Scrum Guide. There's not so many unknowns as compared if you will be waiting for the updated Scrum Guide. And as I mentioned, I'm going to just say it again, the Scrum.org certifications do not expire. They are just as good. They, of course, have the date when they were issued, but I don't know of any organization or anyone looking at those certifications and saying, oh, you had passed it with an older version of the Scrum Guide. Oh, that's not good. So that is highly, highly unlikely that will cause you any problems, because as I mentioned, the Scrum Guide in essence is still the same. And in my opinion, certifications are anyway just, if you're just getting started with Scrum, of course, it's a first step forward. But the idea is also to gather experience with those certifications, not just to have some certifications, you put them on the wall, and hopefully employers or anyone will start calling you and say, hey, I heard you have that certification. That's great. So that's just my take on how I would approach it. Don't wait. If you already start your preparations, take the exam as soon as possible, and take it and run if you want to see it like that. We also have Vivian.
Hey, hi, Valentin. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, how are you?
Thank you. My question is not specifically about the new version of the Scrum. I try to ask you, but if you think that it's not appropriate to answer, that's okay.
Of course, so no. We are talking any question. We are answering any questions here. They don't have to be like related to the Scrum Guide. Anything that is related to Scrum or to the course contents, that's totally fine. So go ahead with your question.
Okay, so I'm preparing for the PSM II, and I found very, very little exam preparation. I found in Udemy one exam. I think I did not find anything of you. So if you do have anything, if you can send me the detail, or if you can share about, what is the difference, what are the complexity about the PSM2 versus the PSM1, or any advice that you can give me, that will be very welcome.
Okay. So yes, that's a great question. I started working on a PSM2 course. Generally, the preparation for PSM2 is not very different from the way you prepare for PSM1. It's just that the questions are much harder. And I started working on a course, and of course, in order to properly release it, I'm also waiting for the latest version of the Scrum Guide so that I can incorporate there any changes. But I will send you a message, and I will send you over what I have so far, so that you can look and you can easily pass the certification also before the new version of the Scrum Guides will be released. So that's absolutely no problem there.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.
And let's move
Thank
on
you.
to Saim, sorry.
Good evening and good morning. I'm Sam from India.
Nice to meet you, Sam.
I have two questions related to the Scrum. One is that, as you said, that Scrum Master certificate never get expired. So do I need to, besides the Scrum guide, do I need to go through any other course material? Number one. Number two, second question is that what tool I must know being as a Scrum Master. I just want to pursue my, career as a Scrum Master.
Okay, so let's take them one by one. So you're asking about the certification. So what the information is that the Scrum Guide will change, and of course the certifications will be impacted, but it doesn't really matter if you already have a certification from Scrum.org that never expires. Regardless how many times the Scrum Guide will change, you can still use that certification without any problems. If that was a question, please correct me if I'm wrong. The second thing was regarding tools, and it really depends from organization to organization which tools are being used. And I would say generally for a Scrum Master, the tooling part, the software part that is being used, let's say how the development team organizes the work, or where does the product owner write product backlog items or user stories, it's not the hardest part of doing Scrum. So your guess is just as good as mine. If you just want to use, you can just do a search for like agile software or agile tools or top agile software or tools for Scrum. Things can, in some projects, you can even use like super basic tools like Trello boards, or you can use even like paper in order to write down the product backlog items and put them on a whiteboard. Of course, nowadays with everyone working remote, that's a different thing. But the idea is tooling is not that important. This is why also the Scrum.org exams, they don't go into which tool or which way of organizing your work you actually use. That's less important. Having like the right skill set for the Scrum Master job, that's definitely more important than tools. So I hope that answers your question. Maybe it's not the exact answer that you were looking for, but as I said, tools really vary from organization to organization. We also have Yash here.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, hey.
Hi, Yash.
Hi, Valentin. So my question is, I'm almost at the end of completing the entire course. I've done a couple of tests from the PSM one. My main question is, I'm pretty positive I'll be taking the test in the next few days to maybe from now. So can I do it from my home? Or should I have to go to a center? I have not got to that part yet, so I just wanted to check with you.
Okay. No worries. So yes, all Scrum.org exams are from your home. There's nobody there to check what you're doing. You don't have to turn on your webcam or any other spooky things. So it's kind of like Scrum.org is trusting that you are an honest person and that you're passing the exam based on what you have learned from courses, from reading the Scrum Guide or reading other materials. So you don't have to go to a test center or anything. There's actually not even this possibility of going to a test center. The way it works in a nutshell is that you purchase a one try for the exam from Scrum.org. It's quite easy to find on the website. You'll get by email a password. And then when you go back to Scrum.org, you can take the exam at any time, at any hour, any day. There's no like slots or anything that you need to book in advance. If you're in the mood to do the exam right now, you can do it. If you want to do it next week, that's fine as well. You just enter your password and start the assessment, start the exam. And the interface will be the same, or anyway, very, very similar to what you have seen on the open assessments from Scrum.org.
One last follow-up question. Somebody raised the question about the PSM2, and you mentioned you'll be making some notes. Are you working on it already? So will we be getting any notification once that you're done? And will you post and send out an email saying, hey, you know what, hey, check out my new course, PSM2? Will we get that?
Yes, I'll do that. So currently it's still in the development. And as I mentioned, I'm also kind of waiting with some of the content to see what's happening in with the Scrum Guide, with the latest version of the Scrum Guide. But of course, if somebody is interested in passing that exam until this newest version of the Scrum Guide will be released, the easiest way is just to send me a message somewhere on LinkedIn, on Udemy, anywhere. And I can give you like an early access to what's already available in the course, but it's not a complete course as you see, for example, the PSM1. But there's already some effort that is going into that. So hopefully that that will help some people there.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was going to ask another question, but it looks like Mr. Jagadish has asked that question already. But that's all I have. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you for asking a question, and hope to see you next time. So I'm just going to do an exception and quickly read because it's related to what we've been discussing so far, like what is the difference between PSM1 and PSM2. The difference is that PSM2 is a much harder exam. And in terms of numbers, I think only about 3% of the people who have PSM1 also have PSM2. So let's say a lot of people can relatively easily learn and pass PSM1. PSM2 is then a much harder exam. It really shows that it's just a different level of understanding of the Scrum Guide. In an essence, more or less the format is the same, just less questions, much harder to pass overall. So that's in a nutshell the idea with PSM2. Probably in one of the next webinars, I will also do like an introduction to PSM2. It's not for everyone. From my point of view, I would do PSM2 if you already have some experience with Scrum, if you already passed PSM1 with a relatively high score. And generally speaking, you should be looking at various certifications. PSM2 is just a harder certification that certifies that you still have the same understanding, more or less, of the Scrum Guide. There may be other professional certifications that may help you achieve whatever goals you want to achieve on the long term. So that's in a nutshell the idea with the difference between PSM1 and PSM2. So I'm going to take some more questions. And guys, thank you so much for raising your hand. That's so appreciated. Otherwise, just me here talking all the time wouldn't be fun at all. So a big thank you to you for being courageous, raising your hand, and asking the question.
Hello.
So please go ahead and ask me what you wanted to ask.
Hi, Valentin.
Hi.
Now most of the companies are looking for actually the project experience, even if you go for the CSM certification also. How to overcome this during the interviews actually? They are asking for actually not the hands-on experience. They are looking for the experience in the project actually.
Yes. So what's your question? If this is true, if companies are looking for experience, or
Yes, the people are looking for the experience in the project itself, not in the hands-on experience actually.
Well, generally it's definitely a combination. So you may not have, let's say, Scrum or Agile experience, but if you already have experience in a specific field that's relevant for that company, it definitely matters. Now, the thing is, Agile and Scrum is something that more and more organizations are starting adopting. And it's natural that they are trying to get people who already know what they're talking about. So, of course, you can train anyone and bring them at a level where they can work in Agile projects. But it's also a nice thing if you are looking at someone that already has 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or so on of hands-on experience in other organizations practicing, any Agile frameworks or Scrum. Sorry.
What is the difference between CSM and PSM certifications actually?
So the difference between CSM and PSM is that they come from two different organizations. PSM comes from scrum.org and CSM comes from Scrum Alliance. In a nutshell, Scrum Alliance requires you to take a course course created by them. And typically the prices are way above 1,000 US dollars, which for a lot of people is quite a lot of money for a Scrum certification. I haven't taken any certifications from Scrum Alliance, just to be honest, but what I understand is that the exams themselves are much easier. So it typically, let's say it's a nice shortcut if your organization or your company is paying for the certification and you just have to attend the course, and at the end you have to take a very relatively easy test, and then you can say, okay, I'm Scrum certified, and the certification is just as well recognized generally. So at least this is what I've learned. This is what I've heard. I haven't taken any exams from them or any courses from them. For PSM, you can decide how you prepare. You can take, Scrum.org also has courses. They are just as expensive as those from Scrum Alliance, but Scrum.org doesn't require you to attend one of their courses. You can take any course that you want. You can study on your own. You cannot, you practically, you don't need any experience or anything like that. You just buy a trial for the exam, answer the questions, and they send you the certification. So that's the overall process, and that's the general difference. A lot of people go with Scrum.org because it's so much affordable, and in many countries, even $150 or $200, there's still a lot of money being invested in getting a certification. So that's in a few sentences, like the difference between these certifications, the way I see it. But overall, both are just as well recognized. If you're searching in any job portal or something like that, for PSM or CSM, both of them are well recognized.
One more question, Valentin.
Sure.
As a DevOps engineer, like how far this Scrum certification will be helpful?
As a DevOps?
Yes. Like in which domain we can enter through? Actually, we have one certification, right? Like certified Scrum developer.
Mm-hmm.
Is this certification will be helpful for the automation engineers?
Well, I think it will be just as helpful in having like a generic Scrum Master certification, because it essentially proves that you have understanding of Scrum. You know the Scrum rules. That's the main idea that this certification is helping you with. It's not really testing practical aspects of your day-to-day work. So when it comes to DevOps or any other thing, let's say on a technical part, that's, I would say, so unrelated to Scrum that I wouldn't like compare the technical testing, the technical part with testing, the understanding of Scrum and Agile. So for that reason, you may take the developer certification or show that you have understanding of Scrum and you kind of have understanding of different development ideas. I wouldn't call it even tools, but it's not one of the most popular certifications that are out there. So
what about this one, Valentin, the SAFe DevOps certification?
It's another organization. It's also well recognized. It really depends a bit in which direction we are going with this, because with any certification, you need to look into who is looking for that specific certification. So ideally, what I recommend, and I discussed this in one of the previous webinars, is especially if you're looking for a job, is to do a bit your homework, because what may work in the US may not work in India, and what is in one way in Europe may be different in Australia. So the main idea is, if you are looking for a specific position, just do a search on Indeed or just do a search on LinkedIn Jobs or any other search portal. Look for a specific keyword, see which are the requirements. What are the requirements for a Scrum Master? Or if you're looking for a DevOps related position, what are the requirements there? Do they even care about Scrum, or they are actually more interested that you know how to use Docker and Kubernetes? So that's the main idea there. So hopefully that was helpful, and I'm gonna go here to Malavika. Sorry if I mispronounced that.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, it's right, Malavika.
Okay, thank you.
Valentin this time. I would like to know if you were speaking about something would change for the Scrum guide, right?
Yes. So there will be a new version of the Scrum Guide. We don't know exactly when this will be released, probably around December. But in a nutshell, there's nothing that you need to do right now apart for continue your preparation, pass the exam, and get on with your life, to put it like that.
Okay. So last webinar also you mentioned that it would be changing in 2 or 3 weeks like that. So I was thinking even the exam pattern would change or not.
That's totally possible, but the idea is that even if you're starting the preparation right now and you need an additional month to learn everything and try out the exam, there's still plenty of time to pass the exam using what we currently know. Originally, I think they wanted to release the Scrum Guide a bit earlier. This is why I also sent like an announcement. Hey guys, there's something coming. So if you're planning to pass these exams, it's probably a good time to start right now and pass it. But it seems now that the date has been moved a bit more towards December. We'll see how that goes. We really don't know a lot right now, but we know that there's still time. As I said, even if you're starting today, there's still plenty of time to prepare and pass the certification.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Let's continue with, I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing that. Nishiganda? I'm sorry. Sometimes I'm horrible at pronouncing names.
Hi, Valentin. That's right.
Hi, how are you?
Okay. Well, I have just finished my course, and that's why I have 3 questions on one topic of development team.
Okay, perfect. Let's hear them.
Yeah. So my first question is, we have seen, in the lectures, multiple development teams or multiple teams work on a specific product. So is there any specific criteria or any limit, like how many maximum teams can work, like say 4, 5, 6? So this is my first question.
Okay, let me answer them by one. Otherwise, I forget. So it's not a problem.
Okay.
You don't have to run away. We can have a conversation. So So first of all, the Scrum Guide doesn't go a lot into scaling Scrum. And this is why there are also like scaling frameworks. For example, you may have heard of Nexus, but others as well. The Scrum Guide itself doesn't impose a hard limit on how many teams can work on a project, on a product, to be more specific. Of course, it's understandable that the more teams that are working on the same product, the complexity of handling so many teams and those teams coordinating will kind of exponentially grow. So, of course, if you have 2 teams that are working on a product, is one thing. If you all of a sudden add a second or a third team, so we'll have 4 teams in total, it will be much, much harder than it was initially with only 2 teams working on that product.
So, and second question is it mandatory for the members of the development team also to have the knowledge of Scrum?
Well, it's not mandatory in the sense that they already have the Scrum Master in the team, and it's kind of expected that the Scrum Master will point out like what are the most important things that they need to do in order to follow along with the Scrum process. What a lot of organizations do is that they want their employees to actually have an idea what Scrum is and how it is supposed to work, and generally like what are the rules. And so it's definitely not a bad thing. Things will work much smoother if everyone knows the rules. It's like if you're trying to play sports with some friends or any game and some of your friends don't know the game rules, then it will be a bit awkward. As long as everybody knows like the rules of the game, things will go much smoother, and everyone will have much more fun than explaining the rules.
Okay, so it is not mandatory, right?
It's not mandatory. It's not something that it's written in the Scrum Guide, but it's sort of like understood that it's definitely not a bad idea.
Okay. Fine. And the last question is, if there are any discrepancies between the teams while working on the product, say for example, even if there are 2 teams working on a product, and if they arrive at a point where there are a lot of confusions or when they do not agree, so how do they resolve them?
Well, this is kind of the point where the Scrum Master is earning his money or her money. in terms of trying to facilitate meetings, trying to bring everyone together, trying to look at what are the differences, seek communication between the teams. There's not like a specific formula that will, solve any problem. A lot of techniques like, the Scrum Master can work with individual teams or work with individual people, ask questions, bring the groups back together, ask open questions, try to find strategies for reaching common sense for, in many situations, there are like some compromises that need to be made. And of course, there are also situations where it's just not the right fit. So generally this falls into the responsibility of the Scrum Master, making sure that everyone understands how Scrum works, understands the importance of delivering increments at the end of the sprint, integrating the work, and so on.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're more than welcome, and thank you for joining. We also have Erica.
Hi, Valentine.
Hi, Erica. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Nice of you to join, and looking forward to hearing your question or questions.
I have two questions.
Okay, one by one, please, so that I don't forget them.
Sure. So the first question, I have already signed up for your PSPO and taking your course. Within few weeks, I would give it a try. I would take the exam. But at the same time, I was actually browsing through the other courses of yours, and I have saw that I am planning to take PSM as well after the PSPO. But before that, I have seen one of your course, which says that which has the certification preparation question. That course only have 2 quizzes or something like that, and those quizzes are same as in the PSPO quizzes, because you have already given 2 quizzes in the PSPO, right? The certification.
Okay, they are not the same questions. They are kind of a different set of questions that apply both for the Scrum Master certification and on the Product Owner certification. Since you mentioned that you also want to take the Professional Scrum Master 1 certification after PSPO, the idea, or what I generally recommend, is if you already plan to take both of them, it is easier if you take PSM first and after that PSPO. The reason for that is PSPO is just a bit harder, not by much, but just a bit harder, and contains also some additional material from the EBM guide. The Scrum Master certification doesn't include that. So of course, if you pass the Product Owner, then you can immediately take the Scrum Master certification. It's just a bit easier in terms of your workload and the exam difficulty overall to take the Scrum Master certification first. Take a look at the result that you got, and after that, make your attempt for the Product Owner certification.
Sure. Thank you.
Just my advice, just to let you know. And yeah, all the courses that I have in terms of practice tests, there are different practice tests for different exams. And the additional course that I created is just to give some students more practice. Typically, for most people, the practice exams that are already included in the course is more than enough to pass the exam. You don't need to over prepare. You don't need to do like hundreds and hundreds of questions. Actually, the idea of the questions is for you to look back at the Scrum guide, not to memorize some questions or to learn from questions. It's just a way to test your understanding of the Scrum guide.
Okay, sure. The second question is, like, if you don't mind, I'm just looking to pursue a career in Scrum Master. So could you suggest some grades or anything which, can help, like, it's just Scrum guide or evidence-based management guide or anything like that wouldn't help us, to enhance our understanding. So if you don't mind, could you please suggest some of the good reads? Like,
well, yeah. It's definitely a hard one, and I'm going to be totally honest with you. The certifications that you take from scrum.org or even my courses, they really do not demonstrate that you have any practical experience in applying Scrum. So you may get just, you may take the exam tomorrow and pass the exam. And if somebody would hire you as a Scrum Master and say you start on Monday, you'll be just almost as clueless as you were before taking the exam. So what happens a lot in practical terms is it's a bit different than the theory. So when it comes to that, the first step, of course, is finding a way to get that practical experience, or finding a way to be around such environments where teams are practicing any agile framework or Scrum, so that you can understand like the dynamics of the group, how things are working, how are the events structured, what kind of problems arise. Because for a lot of people, it appears that if you read the Scrum guide, it seems that the Scrum Master doesn't really have a lot of things to do like during the day. And actually some organizations misunderstand this role a lot and combine it with other roles. So this is like my recommendation. The other way of learning more about being a Scrum Master is by different means. It can be books, it can be also other webinars, it can be looking in forums, or it really depends at the level and the kind of issues that you are struggling in a specific time. So, you know, when you're facing a problem, you kind of like search for that respective problem. If you're hired at one point and you have to, let's say, organize the sprint retrospective, then you may search for like retrospective ideas on how to structure the meeting and so on. So it depends at which level you are. I assume that you're just starting, and do you already have a job as a Scrum Master, or are you trying to get into such a position?
I'm trying to get into one position.
Okay. So the idea is that, and what I typically recommend is, if you're already employed, if you're already in a company, the easiest way is to sort of transition to a Scrum Master position within an organization where people already know you. If that is the case, and I know that for a lot of people that doesn't apply, the road may be a bit harder. You still need to look into seeing what companies are posting in terms of job ads, what are the requirements, at least on your side, what you can do, getting certified or learning more about it definitely helps. So yeah, that's generally what I would do.
Okay, thank you, Valentine.
I hope that helps, and good luck, and let me know how it goes. Or if you have any other questions, I will be more than happy to help you and give you some ideas.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And we also have Sam here wanting to ask a question.
Hi, Valentine. Thank you for the course and the course content. Like I did mention, it has built a solid foundation. I actually have 2 questions. Okay. Based on some of the previous webinars that I actually listened in on, the recordings themselves, I noticed that there were a couple of questions that were raised regarding software architecture questions in the actual examination itself. Mm-hmm. So I was just trying to get an idea of what type of software architecture questions could be answered, because the Scrum guide doesn't really emphasize any of these topics right now.
So the idea with answering these kind of questions is, the temptation, especially if you're a technical person, is to like jump into like putting yourself into the shoes of the development team or the Scrum Master and trying to, figure out, if I were in a project, what would be like the right thing to do and how to approach this. This is definitely not what the Scrum Guide is asking. This is like one of the trick questions where especially people that have project experience or have done Scrum before, they try to catch them with kind of like going into what's happening in day-to-day situations and interactions. The reason why you don't find something regarding architecture or infrastructure or anything, like say, very, very technical, is that they are not relevant from a Scrum perspective. And what I mean by that is that any work that happens within the sprint. So there are like no special sprints that deal, for example, the famous sprint 0 or the kickoff sprint or anything like that, where in the first sprint or the first 2 sprints, everybody knows there's a lot of things to do. You have to work on the infrastructure, you have to set up the servers and so on and so forth. And this is like not the idea of Scrum. The idea of Scrum is that, you know, right from the first sprint, of course, the first sprints will be, you will do more in terms of infrastructure, will do more in terms of like planning the architecture based on what you know. Especially we as software developers, when we're talking about software, like we're deep into like figuring out like what could expect us in terms of what will happen in the next sprints. We kind of don't like this not having things predictable, want to plan everything in advance, want to be like as future-proof as possible. So this is the kind of questions that try to catch you in the exam. And the main idea is that infrastructure, architecture, anything, you know, that seems technical or goes in this direction, it's not different from any other development work that needs to happen within the sprint. You know, like the normal, for a software project, normal writing of code, testing is also part of the work that happens in the sprint. If there's any documentation that is required to release the product, that's also part of the sprint work. And it's also done by the development team. So there's nothing special about those questions. The only thing that you need to remember is always thinking that what are the Scrum rules? Are there any Scrum rules that are being broken in, for example, one of the options mentioned there. But the idea is that infrastructure and architecture, they're not decided somehow in advance. We use the term emerge. They emerge during the following sprints. We allow ourselves also to make not perfect decisions. We make mistakes in the beginning, and that's totally fine. It's more important to deliver at least a bit of functionality and show them and say, hey, look, it's just one button, but you know, let's start clicking it and seeing what happens. And you know, in the second sprint, you will see a button and you will see also a window. So it's better than not seeing anything. That's the main idea of Scrum. And no, this infrastructure, architecture, they all emerge. There's not like they finish at one point and you never do anything regarding architecture or infrastructure. If you need it, you do it. It's part of the work from every sprint.
Okay, so everything's just run in parallel. Everything is running in parallel.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum that up.
Okay, no, that's fine. The second question is with regards to transparency. Mm-hmm. Okay, basically, who's responsible for the lack of transparency?
Basically, what I wanted to find out was if we get this type of examination question about who's responsible for the lack of transparency, would the correct answer actually be the Scrum Master? Would the best answer rather be the Scrum Master, given the circumstances? So
it's definitely one of the like options that would be very correct to say that. And in Scrum, we say that the Scrum Master must ensure transparency because he is responsible for the Scrum process working. And as you know, Scrum is built on empiricism, and you know one of the pillars is transparency. So without transparency, Scrum cannot work, or if transparency is affected, things cannot work. So in that regards, definitely the Scrum Master has a very essential role in ensuring that there is transparency. And another way to look at transparency is that it's not about, you know, making things, giving access to everyone. You know, for example, in terms of the product backlog, making sure that everyone has access. You know, that's kind of like misunderstanding like transparency. It's not about access, not about, you know, putting things, giving everyone access, or putting like the product backlog in a place where everyone can see it or something like that, or any other artifacts or any other things that we're inspecting. Transparency is about understanding. It's about everyone involved looking at something and having like the same understanding about what we are actually looking at. That's another way of looking at transparency. And this is why also like super important. You don't only need to see it. Everyone looking at something must understand what they are seeing. But that's definitely like a more advanced question in terms of like transparency and how it works. Definitely like going more into the level of PSM2.
Actually, I have one last question.
Please go
just
ahead.
a quick one. Just a quick one. With regards to the actual product backlog itself, when's the actual product backlog started? Is it started prior to the first to the actual sprint itself? When it's the requirements phase being done by the product owner, or is it actually started with the sprint?
Well, you can imagine generally that the idea of creating a product, of starting like from nothing, start with some idea. So this is why we also say that there must be a product vision. It's like important, like trying to understand like where are we going, why are we building this, what are we trying to achieve eventually, who are we serving, and the idea in Scrum is that initially the product backlog can just be a list of ideas. It can also be like ideas that the product owner comes to the first meeting, the sprint planning meeting, and creates the product backlog right then and there. It's not a requirement. The requirement is that you have the Scrum team that can work on the product and enough ideas to start the first sprint. And typically when you're just starting a product, you have plenty of ideas. So that's rarely a problem in getting started. So there's not, I cannot put it from a Scrum Guide perspective, like this kind of like, how do we kick off a new Scrum project is not so relevant. It tries to focus more like on the long-term perspective. It doesn't really matter if, the product owner has already has like a list and is trying to, what is trying to build, or is refining that list in the sprint planning meeting, in the first sprint planning meeting. The idea is like, it's just the initial phase. We're looking at the long term, like how is the team performing? What are the issues? Which are the Scrum rules? Why are these Scrum rules? That's definitely more important.
Okay, so it's not really specified by the actual Scrum Guide itself as to when to actually start the product backlog. But you did raise an interesting point though, with regards to a product vision.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that also would happen prior to the actual sprint or anything. It's not specified in the Scrum Guide.
It's not specified in the Scrum Guide. It's, if you think about it, it's just the normal way of how you'll be approaching things. I mean, why would you have a Scrum team if you don't plan building a product? So it's kind of like, it's the other way around. You let's say someone from management or the organization itself, recognizes, okay, we want, the users are asking for this product. We may already have like a list of ideas, or like what should this product do practically before we even start, like how do we staff a new team, or how many teams would we need to, or how many people would we need to accomplish something. So that's the main idea there. I'm gonna take also last question, I think, from ST Rona.
Hi, Valentine.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, my question is, so currently I'm working as a QA engineer in a Scrum framework project. So I'm looking forward to move into Scrum Master role. So what is that I should focus more on in my current project that will help me to get some practical and hands-on experience with respect to the Scrum Master role?
Mm-hmm. So maybe I misunderstood. The project where you're on, is it an agile project, or what are you currently doing?
Yeah, it's an agile project.
Okay, so you already like have the understanding how the project works. Let's say maybe not all the Scrum rules are respected as it's say in the book, but it's still like an environment that's trying to be agile, right?
Yes, I know all the basic things. We follow sprints, and I know as with respect to the quality assurance, but not with respect to Scrum Master or the roles or responsibilities that a Scrum Master do.
Okay.
So what would be a good...
Well, from my point of view, a good starting point would definitely be reaching out to existing Scrum Masters within the organization and like having conversations with them, because they will give you like an idea how are they doing their job, or if you're also given the opportunity of observing what they do. Of course, nowadays with everyone working at home, it's definitely a challenge. It's not so easy like to see how a Scrum Master does his job. So that's a bit harder, but it's still something very insightful, like understanding how other Scrum Masters in your organization are doing their job. Additionally, you may also kind of announce your intention, and one way of announcing your intention, like, hey, I'm also interested and don't want to only focus on testing. Maybe it's nice, but I'm also interested in becoming a Scrum Master. This is something you can also discuss with the organization where you're in. And of course, if you're already taking like steps in preparing yourself, like passing certifications, it's already showing that you have a genuine interest in, being, not just saying it, hey, I would like to be a Scrum Master if possible. If not, okay, I'm gonna be something else. You're just showing like genuine interest that you're really interested in this role. You wanna be a Scrum Master. So what I would recommend is like also mentioning it to any of your superiors if you have any, or looking out for if there are any open positions. The chances that somebody will give you a chance within your organization to, let's say, try out to be a Scrum Master and also learn from others, or maybe assist someone, are much higher than, let's say, quitting your job and trying to get a Scrum Master job without any experience at all. So that's kind of the approach that I would take. No more questions, and we are also running out of time. Thank you so much. It's been great having you here. And as always, if you have any questions, you can reach out inside of courses in the Q&A section. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions that will help you prepare for any exam or certification that you're taking. And of course, I'm always looking forward to hearing from you. Right after you're taking the exam, just let me know how it went. If there were like any surprises in there, anything that you didn't know or you didn't feel prepared for, which score did you get, and so on. So it's I'm always happy when I get a message from someone saying, hey, I'm taking your course, I passed the certification. Hopefully this, I know that in many cases, this has directly helped people get a job. So from that point of view, definitely, I know that it will help you, and this is why I'm also doing this webinars here to help you out, understand and pass the exam and continue and grow in your careers. Have a good one. Bye-bye.